I'm really pleased to be able to share with you and your members today to raise awareness and save lives. So thank you for the opportunity.
We're excited to have a very special guest with us here today. As you maybe know, the biggest killer worldwide and in Australia is heart disease. Every 20 minutes somebody in Australia suffers a heart attack, 21 die every day. That's why I asked Dr. Warrick Bishop to come on today. He's a leading Australian cardiologist, keynote speaker and best-selling author. And he is on a mission to prevent heart disease globally so people can live longer and well in the same time. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Warrick Bishop, who will educate us, who will bring awareness and will also share some valuable tools that you can implement straight away.
Look, it's a pleasure to be here. You alluded to something that happened to me a number of years ago. The truth was I'd evaluated someone back in 2003. I'd reassured them after we'd done a standard risk test and a stress test. And literally 18 months later, I was involved in the roadside resuscitation of this very same man. I subsequently found out because we were able to save him, which was just fantastic. But I subsequently found out that he had 3 children under 10 years of age. And I realized that what we were doing back in 2003 was just not good enough. And since that time, I've been open to trying to understand better technologies. And I'm really pleased to be able to share with you and your members today to raise awareness and save lives. So thank you for the opportunity. Because one of the things I realize is that we often don't think of the heart as in a way that allows us to be proactive about risk. And I often think that one of the really nice things that we do, all of us do, is we get our cars serviced on a regular basis because we don't want to be breaking down and using a tow truck. And the simple irony of that, Eric, is that many of us don't do that with our hearts, yet our heart is the most important engine in our entire life. And so we go along and we don't think about it, we don't get it serviced, we don't get it checked, and then lo and behold, out of the blue, something happens and everyone's shocked, and they shouldn't be. Coronary artery disease affects 1 in 4 people. So if you're not checking, you're missing an opportunity. So if it's all right with you, I'd love to share some background stuff just to give your members some information as a foundation. How would that be?
Please, it would be super valuable.
Look, let me share a screen, and I'll chat, and I'm sure I'll educate you and those listening. I often think that a really good way to think about the heart is to think of a car engine and the components of a car engine. Obviously, the heart is a pump. It's got an engine block, and that engine block compresses and pumps blood around the body, like the engine block of a car. But an engine block of the car also has pistons and valves. And in the heart, they're one-way valves, which make sure that the blood goes in one direction. In a car, we've got fuel lines. Well, the equivalent in our own body are coronary arteries. The fuel lines deliver the energy to the engine block. Well, that's exactly what our coronary arteries do. Our heart also has an electrical system, and that electrical system makes sure that the timing is good. It makes sure that the heart is in beautiful coordinated contraction, a bit like you've got to make sure that all your cylinders are getting the sparks at the right time. Otherwise, things don't work properly. And really importantly, and this is so under-recognized broadly, there is a pressure that the engine runs at. In your car, you check out the pressure in the radiator, but in our bodies, it's exactly the same. Let me go into a little bit more detail. I think the really important thing to understand about the heart is when we talk about the circulation, imagine a bicycle tire, and at the top of that bicycle tire are the lungs, and blood goes from the lungs out into the tissues, through the tissues, the organs, the capillaries, where it gives out oxygen and takes out carbon dioxide, comes back through the heart to the lungs again, where gas exchange occurs. And if we think about that, really we've got the veins drawing blood back into the right side of the heart. The right side of the heart pumps blood to the lungs. The lungs then empty into the left side of the heart, and the left side of the heart pumps blood around the body. I've got a little diagram there. And really, it's a reminder that we almost have two separate hearts, one on the right side and one on the left side, but they are all wrapped up and work together as a single organ within the chest, our lifeblood. I'll just move our little picture there, but you can see there's valves within the heart. So blood comes in through the superior and inferior vena cava. These are the big blood vessels that drain blood from the top of the body and the bottom of the body. The blood flows into the right atrium through the tricuspid valve, which is a one-way valve, goes into the right ventricle, is squeezed to the lungs, or it goes through the pulmonary valve, again a one-way valve. The blood moves through the lungs where oxygen is absorbed, carbon dioxide is released, and then it comes back through the pulmonary veins into the left atrium through the mitral valve. And people may have heard of these names. The mitral valve allows blood in a one-way direction into the left ventricle. Then the left ventricle, the main pumping chamber of the heart, pumps blood out through the aorta, the biggest blood vessel in the body, the biggest artery in the body, and the aorta has an aortic valve to ensure that blood doesn't leak back. So we've got these series of valves, we've got these pistons, things are squeezing and blood's moving in a circular direction through the lungs and around the body, delivering oxygen. It's just fantastic, actually. So, and I'll move us back up here. So if we now think about the fuel lines, we've talked a bit about the pistons and the valves. These are the fuel lines. On the left-hand side there, I've drawn a very simple diagram showing how the fuel lines, the coronary arteries, come off the aorta. As soon as the aorta comes out of the left ventricle, the coronary arteries, the arteries that supply blood to the heart, are the very first arteries that come off the circulation. And they run over the surface of the muscle of the heart, penetrating into the heart muscle and supplying oxygen and nutrients for best heart function. We've got a left main coronary artery, which breaks into two other arteries, one that runs down the front and one around the back of the heart, called the left anterior descending and circumflex arteries, respectively. And then we've got a right coronary artery, which runs really to the bottom, or what we call the inferior surface of the heart. It's a fantastic bit of technology, but there's not a lot of redundancy, Eric. These arteries are only a couple of millimeters at maximum and only about 40 centimeters if you line them all up. So there's not a huge amount of redundancy, which means we really have to look after them and be aware if there's any problems. And I'll talk about the electrical system here. The electrical system is just fantastic. There's one of the things that's amazing about the heart. If we were to take an entire beating heart and we could magically separate every cell and spread it out on a table, quite remarkably, every single one of those cells would have the ability to contract by itself. We call that automaticity, and it's an incredible thing to think about, that these cells have an electrical process that allows them to beat by themselves. Well, it turns out that the cells that do this the fastest in the top part of the heart beat the drum that the rest of the heart marches to. And so these cells in the top part of the right atrium, called the sinoatrial node, they fire off on a regular basis and the rest of the heart keeps in time, leading to this beautiful, synchronized, coordinated contraction. And that gives rise to our ECG with a little bump, spiky bump, and another bump. And that happens over and over, 100,000 times a day, 3 billion times in a lifetime. It's just extraordinary. Well, what about the pressure in the system? Well, if we put ourselves under pressure, it's great. We get our muscles built up and we look terrific down at the beach. But too much pressure on our heart muscle can make it thicken up, and that's no good. It's all good for our biceps, but if our heart muscle thickens up, it becomes stiffer and doesn't work as well. And we don't have a good way of dealing with that. So we've got to keep that pressure down from the get-go. So what can go wrong with the heart? Well, think about your car engine. Well, first of all, the pump can fail. The engine block may have a problem. The valves can leak or they can get sticky. The fuel lines can get blocked. The electrical system can play up or go out of whack. And the pressure can be too high for too long. So what drives something going wrong? Well, unfortunately, the long and the short of it is, to a large degree, it can be wear and tear. I've alluded to the pump being troubled by wear and tear, and that's too much pressure, for example. The valves, every beat, they're moving. So there's a process of wear and tear, and time will drive that. The fuel lines or the arteries are exactly the same in the electrical system. Again, processes of wear and tear. Well, what does this mean in terms of words and diagnoses and what I see as a cardiologist? Well, if the heart pump starts to play up, we call that cardiac failure. If the valves start to play up, we call that valvular heart disease. If the fuel lines play up, that's coronary artery disease. And the most common way the electrical system goes out of whack is a thing called atrial fibrillation. So what leads to wear and tear in the engine? Age and pressure to a large degree. Of course, there are other environmental aspects, things like cholesterol levels, smoking. These are common sense things. Diabetes and pre-diabetes, poor diet and lack of exercise. Well, you've already alluded to heart disease as a leading cause of death in the Western world. But it's not just men, it's men and women. And often we forget this. This is so important. Although everyone makes a deal about particular health issues for women, such as breast cancer, coronary artery disease accounts for about 8 or 9 times more deaths in women than breast cancer. It is a major cause of mortality and morbidity for women. So I've talked an absolute heap, Eric. If there are individuals who want to know more about their own heart health and want to get a virtual heart check, I'd love them to check out this QR code. It will take them through a process where they can put in some simple bits and pieces and even think about getting further testing for their own heart. So if you're listening, watching, and you're interested in a bit more information about your own heart, check out the virtual heart check. And here it is. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to invite you to ask me any questions there, Eric, because I could see you taking notes and I hope I've given you some stuff to think about, because honestly, it's been my passion for 30 plus years looking after people's hearts, and every day in every way. I know so little about it, but I love it. It's an extraordinary organ, which it's so lucky to have one.
Mind-blowing information. Thanks for bringing the awareness and sharing that with us. And I really like the analogy with the car, because when we have a car, we bring it to the service every year, isn't it? But people never check their heart until it's maybe already too late or they have an issue. But what you're talking about, how can we prevent it and diagnose it better in the beginning and see if something is wrong?
Eric, my passion is to really open people's minds and raise awareness to the idea of maintenance medicine and preventative medicine, not tow truck medicine. Because when people break down, 1 in 6 heart attacks die there and then. 1 in 6 heart attacks die there and then. And 20% of all heart attacks occur in people 65 years of age or under. And that is just not okay. These are people, I can tell you because I'm pretty close to that age, who have a lot of life to live and give. So we should be screaming to prevent this ridiculous sort of epidemic of people dying needlessly. It is preventable if we know what's there. We can steer around potholes in the road if we identify them. If we're not looking, we don't know. So it's all about prevention. It's not about letting people break down and hoping there's a tow truck nearby.
Love the analogies, Dr. Warrick. Really, really like them with the tow truck. And how can we be more or diagnosing earlier. Amazing. So if everyone is interested from the community, I will post the link as well under the video, and you can click on it. It's a free heart check, a free virtual heart check. I already sent to some of my friends and family as well, and highly recommend to take it. Takes like a couple of minutes, right? It's not like a hourly thing, and then you will have a bit more clarity and know what's actually going on, and if you fall in one of the or in what risk category you fall.
Look, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, Eric. And as I said, I'm always grateful for the opportunity to share, educate, and raise awareness, because I fully believe the best educated patients get the best healthcare. And honestly, the philosophy I've applied over the years is to help people live as well as possible for as long as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I think just last thing I want to add to that, I think it really falls in line with our philosophy at Inner Fire Health, because for us, it's all about prevention as well. So we want to help people not to get sick and then want to change their health or focus on their health, but actually what can we do today? How can we be sure that we also have a long life, and not just a long life, but also living well and being healthy, happy and strong for as long as possible. Thanks, Dr. Warrick.
Thank you, Eric.